Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m., join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there.
In this quick hit, as we close out 2021, we're going to look at some of the top-selling songs and films from decades in the past. Stay with us.
You're listening to a 3324 podcast quick hit with Dean Legiro, where Dean shares stories and trivia about his favorite chart hits, actors, movies, and more.
Welcome, friends, to this week's 3324 Quick Hit. My name is Dean Legiro. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find us on social media. The big news, if you listen to us on Spotify using your mobile device, you can now give us a rating. We would very much appreciate it if you would notch that all the way up to 5 stars and let people know how much you like the 3324 podcast. So, as I mentioned in the open, we are closing out 2021, so I thought it would be fun to take a look at the charts, the top 5 movies and singles from the charts from decades past, specifically 50 years ago, 1971, and 1981, as both of those decades closed out. So let's talk about the top singles from 1971. And these were not the ones that ended the year, but these were overall top singles from the entire year. And in 1971 was a good spread of artists, and you started to see the hippie movement come to an end, and some of the singer-songwriter movement really start to come to the forefront. So the 5th most popular song in 1971 was How Can You Mend a Broken Heart by the Bee Gees. And we would know later on in the 70s would be very good to them, more specifically the late 70s. Coming in at number 4, One Bad Apple by the Osmonds. Number 3, the singer-songwriter movement takes place right here with It's Too Late, backed with I Feel the Earth Move by Carole King. And she would usher in that singer-songwriter movement with James Taylor, Gordon Lightfoot, and all those other great artists. The number 2 song for 1971, Maggie May, backed with Reason to Believe by Rod Stewart. And the number 1 single from 1971 is Three Dog Night with Joy to the World. Three Dog Night would have 2 other number 1 singles, Mama Told Me Not to Come and Black and White. They would have an astounding 21 singles in the top 40 from 1969 to 1975. An absolute amazing achievement for that group. On the film side, the top 5 films for 1971, also very eclectic bunch here. So the number 5, the 5th most popular movie in 1971, was the film Summer of 42. The 4th most popular could not be more different, and it's The French Connection with Gene Hackman and his iconic role as Popeye Doyle. The number 3, the 3rd most popular film of 1971, is the return of Sean Connery to the James Bond role in Diamonds Are Forever. After leaving the role and George Lazenby taking over on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Sean Connery was convinced to come back one more time for Bond, and he did it with Diamonds Are Forever. The 2nd most popular film of 1971 is a musical, the classic Fiddler on the Roof. The number 1 film in 1971, a very small film, was actually self-distributed by the writer and the director. It was Billy Jack, and that was by Tom Laughlin, and there was a prequel to this film called Born Losers. And Billy Jack was so popular that it actually spawned a franchise. There would be 2 or 3 other films after Billy Jack. So that's 1971 in a nutshell with music and movies. Moving on to 1981, we're going to go forward a decade. And how things have changed. Music and film, absolutely. So, getting to music, the top 5 singles for 1981, coming in at number 5, was Rick Springfield and Jesse's Girl. Number 4, Just Like Starting Over from the late John Lennon, from his album Double Fantasy. The number 3 single from 1981 is a country artist. Lady from Kenny Rogers. Kenny Rogers was crossing over at the time, hitting both the country charts and the popular music charts with his music, and Lady was the number 3 single from 1981. The number 2 single from 1981 was from the soundtrack, and it was a massive song. It was the theme from Endless Love from Diana Ross and Lionel Richie. Coming in at number 1, the number 1 single of 1981, kind of novelty-ish, but Bette Davis Eyes from Kim Carnes. Kim Carnes had the number 1 single of all of 1981 with the single Bette Davis Eyes. Moving on to film. All of these films, there's 5 films that we have here in our top chart. All three of them actually were sequels or spawned sequels. So coming in at number 5 is Arthur with Dudley Moore and Liza Minnelli. That would spawn a sequel many years later, Arthur 2 on the Rocks. The number 4 film for 1981 was Bill Murray with Stripes, and a very then unknown John Candy in a much smaller role, and fellow Ghostbuster Harold Ramis was in that film as well. The number 3 film from 1981, 9 to 5, with Dolly Parton, Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and the great Dabney Coleman, was the number 3 film for the whole year of 1981. Coming in at number 2 is a sequel. Superman 2 was the number 2 film for 1981, sequel to the great Superman movie with Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman, and those films, Superman and Superman 2, were basically filmed all at the same time and then broken up later on to make a sequel. And the number 1 film from 1981, which would spawn a franchise and would become part of movie history, is a little small film called Raiders of the Lost Ark, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Harrison Ford with a story by George Lucas. And this would spawn an iconic character in Indiana Jones and his adventures, inspired by the old-time serials from the 30s and 40s. Definitely a love letter to that type of filmmaking, but brought into the current time, and just an amazing film franchise. Temple of Doom would follow. Last Crusade would follow, and then it would be many years later, Kingdom of Crystal Skull, and eventually there is another Indiana Jones film that is going to be made. So even though we're going back 40 years, what's old, again, is new. So those are your 2 decades worth of top 5 chart hits and films. This has been Dean with your 3324 Quick Hit. Thank you for all your support throughout this year. As we end our first year of our podcast, we are looking forward to bringing more music and movie content to you. So please stay with us, won't you? We've got a lot more on the horizon. Thank you very much. We will see you on the flip side.
This has been a 3324 Podcast Quick Hit. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider. So please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.